6 a.m. Tuesday. One could say this was a monumental day for Quoc, but that's what he heard others say. For Quoc, he felt completely adrift. It had been almost 10 years since he had any contact with the outside world. That number might have been even higher if he hadn't shown good rehabilitation in prison. The past decade had been like a nightmare for Quoc. He still remembered that fateful afternoon. On his way home from work, feeling a bit tired and sore, he just wanted to get home quickly, embrace his wife and child, and sleep. And it was that very haste that made him lose control of the wheel. His car swerved, crashing head-on into a bicycle coming from the opposite direction. The strong impact threw the couple on the bicycle onto the road, causing severe head injuries, and they died on the way to the emergency room. Quoc was initially sentenced to 8 years in prison, but for some reason, because he couldn't pay compensation and the victim's family wanted harsher punishment, the sentence was increased to 13 years. The day he heard the verdict, Quoc collapsed, feeling a crushing wave of guilt. He even considered suicide in prison. It was the correctional officers who helped him mentally, allowing him to continue living until today. After completing all the paperwork, Quoc stepped out of the prison gate. His belongings were just a few changes of clothes, 2 packs of cigarettes, and some travel money. All of this was contributed by fellow inmates and the officers so he would have enough to return to his hometown and rebuild his life. At the gate, Quoc took a deep drag from his cigarette, then closed his eyes, observing everything around him. Just then, a voice called from behind, "Is no one here to pick you up?" Quoc turned around and recognized the person who called him, the gate officer. He bowed his head, smiled, and replied, "No, officer. I didn't inform them of my release date, and it's a long way from home. No need to trouble my family." "Oh, I see. Have you got enough money to catch a bus home?" "Yes, I do. This morning, when I was doing the paperwork, Mr. Nam gave me over 2 million. It's such a large amount, I didn't dare to take it, so I asked the officers to hold on to it for me." "What's the big deal? If they give it to you, just take it. These days, that amount isn't much anymore. It's probably just enough for your bus fare and to buy a few snacks for the kids at home." Quoc was a bit startled, but then he understood. After all, it had been 10 years, and prices had changed with the times. Quoc followed the narrow path in front of the prison to the main road. Looking at the busy traffic ahead, he felt utterly overwhelmed. It took him a while to get used to it. He walked into a small convenience store, intending to buy a bottle of water and ask for directions to the bus station. "Excuse me, ma'am." Just as he called out, Quoc saw the owner of the convenience store stand up, turn to the back, and whisper. Her eyes widened in alarm, and she asked, "What is it? What are you doing here?" In that instant, Quoc seemed to understand the problem. The answer to her hesitation was that he had just walked out of the prison road, not wearing any uniform, so it didn't take long for the store owner to realize he was a former inmate who had just completed his sentence. Quoc raised his hand and waved. "I just want to buy a bottle of water and ask for directions to the bus station." "Oh, I don't know anything. No water either. We don't sell water here." Quoc looked down at the shelves. There were clearly dozens of bottles of water. He shook his head, sighed, and turned to leave. Before his release, Quoc had imagined being ostracized by society, but he never expected it to be this severe. He kept walking for a bit longer and eventually found water to drink. Since he was now far from the prison, no one paid him any attention. They even spoke to him very kindly. Of course, Quoc wasn't foolish enough to tell them he had just been released from prison. He simply pretended to be lost and needed to get to the bus station to return home. After nearly an hour, the bus stopped at Phu Le bus station, and indeed, he felt like someone dropped from the sky. Among the rows of houses, people came and went like ants. The bus station felt so strange. He took a deep breath, inhaling the air of his new life, then walked straight out of the bus station gate and took a motorbike taxi home. Sitting in the taxi, Quoc eagerly imagined the reactions of his family members. His parents, his relatives, and especially his son, Engia. When Quoc went to prison, Engia was just over 2 years old. Now he must be in middle school. During his sentence, Engia had been brought to visit him a few times by his grandparents, but because of the long distance and fear of burdening his family financially, they only communicated by writing letters. Another person appeared in Quoc's mind, Linh, his wife. But that name was now only a part of the past. According to what his parents told him in their letters, after almost a year at home raising their child, Linh started working at a garment factory. She wrote to him a few times, but after that, there was no news. Quoc pressed for information and learned that Linh had left home, and where she went, there was no need to guess. Many people said Linh had gone to the market town to marry someone else. The news was painful, but then he had to reconsider. Linh was still so young. At 23, in the prime of her youth, how could she wait for a prisoner for over 10 years? Even now, the thing that weighed heavily on his mind was the desire to find his ex-wife and apologize to her. Lost in thought for a while, the taxi stopped in front of an alley leading to his house. Quoc got out, paid the fare, and narrowed his eyes, looking around. Indeed, everything had changed so much. Before, this area only had a little over a dozen households, but with what Quoc was seeing now, that number had quadrupled or quintupled. Without hesitation, he walked into the alley. After a few more dozen meters, Quoc stopped, astonished by the familiar sight before his eyes. Everything might have changed, but his family's small house remained just as it was 10 years ago, perhaps a bit more moldy and old. He stood there for over 10 minutes before finally asking, "Mom?" It took a moment before a figure emerged from the house. It was none other than Mrs. Lai, Quoc's mother. She rubbed her wrinkled eyes and gasped in disbelief. "My goodness, Quoc!" Mrs. Lai couldn't control her emotions. She collapsed to the ground. Hearing her voice, another person stepped out from inside the house. It was Mr. Tu, Quoc's father. Seeing his son standing right outside the door, he could do nothing but gape in astonishment. Quoc smiled and called out again, "Mom, Dad, I'm home. Open the door for me." The house door opened and Quoc stepped inside. He hugged Mrs. Lai tightly, crying tears of immense joy. Mr. Tu also rushed over, embracing all three of them, uttering sounds of pure happiness. Mrs. Lai gently slapped her son's back. "You rascal, why didn't you tell me you were coming home? Last time you wrote, you said it would be months. Are you escaping?" Quoc shook his head vigorously. "Oh, Mom, I'm not crazy enough to escape. This time I got an amnesty, and I worked hard and reformed well in there, so my sentence was shortened. I sent a letter, but it took a while, so I just came home." Mr. Tu interjected, "It's okay, it's good that you're home. It's good that you're home." Quoc nodded, looking around the house. "Where's Engia, Mom, Dad?" "He's at school, he'll be home soon. If he knows you're home, he'll be overjoyed. Every time you wrote, I had to read it to him because these two old folks don't know how to read. He even said that when you come home, he'll go show off to all his friends that he has a father now, and he won't be called fatherless or motherless anymore." Hearing this, Quoc couldn't control his emotions. His eyes turned red, on the verge of tears. However, this was not the moment for him to cry because Quoc remembered he had to quickly go to the Commune People's Committee to report his presence as required. So, he borrowed Mr. Tu's old motorcycle and left. Along the way, he kept observing the roadside to see if there were any lumber mills. During his time in prison, he had learned woodworking, and his skills were considered quite good. With this trade, Quoc wanted to apply to a lumber mill to support himself and earn money to rebuild his life. And perhaps luck was on Quoc's side, as he quickly found a rather large lumber mill. What's more, there was a big "Workers Wanted" sign at the front gate. Back to his main task, Quoc arrived at the committee. After completing the reporting procedures, he stepped outside, accompanied, of course, by a warning from the officer inside. "You've already had a criminal record. It's best not to do anything wrong, or next time there won't be any place for you to reintegrate into the community." These words actually had little effect on Quoc. The most important thing was that he himself was aware of how he needed to live. 10 years in prison was more than enough for Quoc. Leaving the committee, he got on the motorcycle and headed to the lumber mill he had seen earlier. By now, it was past 5 p.m., so the mill was closed. Quoc reluctantly decided to return home and come back the next morning to apply for a job. When Quoc got home, before he even had time to push the motorcycle into the yard, a small figure rushed out. "Dad, Dad!" Quoc froze, stunned, as he received a hug from the child. "Is this Engia? He's grown so much." Quoc bent down and lifted his son, all the suppressed emotions from the afternoon now completely meaningless. He sobbed like a child, hugging his son tightly, stammering through his tears, "Dad, I'm sorry." The boy looked at his father with clear eyes and asked, "Dad, why are you crying?" "You're back with me now. Please don't leave again, okay? I missed you so much." Okay, Dad promises you. From inside the house, Mrs. Lai came out and patted her grandson's head. Engia, you have to let your dad come inside to eat, okay? Are you two going to stand there until morning? Come on, let's eat, son. Quoc carried Engia and with his mother walked inside. The living room today had only one more person, but the atmosphere was lively and joyful. Everyone laughed and chatted heartily. Halfway through the meal, Mr. Tu turned to his son. So, what are you planning to do next? I'm planning to apply at the Duck Triu lumber mill. I passed by it this afternoon, and it had a workers' wanted sign. I'll go check it out tomorrow. Hearing that, Mr. Tu nodded, looking satisfied. It's good that you have the ambition to work, but listen to what your father says. From tomorrow, if you get the job, go to the cemetery and light an incense stick for them. It's been a long time. Of course, Quoc immediately knew who, them, Mr. Tu was referring to the two unfortunate victims on the bicycle whose lives he had taken years ago. At this moment, Quoc's heart sank. He gripped the bowl of rice in his hand. It took a long while for Quoc to regain his composure. He nodded, bowing his head to the table. Yes, I know, Dad. The joyful atmosphere suddenly fell silent. Mrs. Lai quickly interjected. Oh, Mr. Tu, our son has just returned. Everything should be taken slowly, not rushed. Don't be so critical. Have you lost faith in your son? He has to pay for his actions. Don't you think it's enough? Hearing his wife's words, Mr. Tu shook his head, pulled out a cigarette from his pack, then stood up and walked outside. Quoc sighed. He knew very well that he was the only child in this family, and from a young age, he had been spoiled and well provided for until he dropped out of 12th grade to work. He also knew better than anyone how much expectation Mr. Tu had placed on him. Lying in the familiar room next to his sleeping son, Engia, Quoc looked out the window distantly, as if contemplating his difficult future. The next morning, Quoc woke up early. He checked his pocket and found he had over 200,000 dong left, so he decided to buy some cakes, incense sticks, votive paper, and then head to the cemetery. Stepping into the small convenience store in the neighborhood, Quoc called out, but he didn't see the owner. Mrs. Nam, Mrs. Nam. Hold on, I'm busy, a voice responded from inside. After a moment, a woman named Nam emerged, her face initially welcoming. But that friendliness immediately faded as she seemed to realize something, her attitude becoming somewhat flustered. Oh, it's you, Quoc. Are you well? When did you get back? I just got back yesterday. And you got an amnesty. Why so soon? It's April 30th, May 1st, right? Plus, I reformed well in there. Oh, okay. What do you want to buy then? Please give me some incense sticks, a pack of small cakes, a bottle of water, and a clean cloth. Mrs. Nam opened the display cabinet to get the items Quoc needed and then asked again, Why are you buying these things now? For offerings at home? No, ma'am. I'm buying them to visit the graves at the cemetery. His hesitation seemed to be understood by Mrs. Nam, who whispered, Be careful out there, okay? Don't go alone, especially at night. Why, Auntie? I don't know if I should say this, but your parents and I are somewhat acquainted as neighbors. I won't hide it from you. The couple you caused the accident, they're very restless. Even now, they haven't found peace. What do you mean? I don't understand what you're saying. Didn't your mother tell you? No, ma'am. What happened, Auntie? Please tell me. All right, I'll tell you. After you were arrested and detained, the accident scene out here was very chaotic. In just 2 or 3 days, there were several accidents, all caused by people falling on their own. After the couple's family held the funeral, they invited a sorcerer to perform a ritual at the accident site to bring their souls home. That day, I happened to pass by and stopped to watch. The master set up an altar with many spiritual items. Along with it, a large white cloth was spread out on the roadside. At noon, the sounds of drums, gongs, and chimes echoed continuously. Nothing seemed unusual until about 10 minutes later, when the sky suddenly darkened, even though it had been sunny just moments before. It became so dark that you couldn't see people's faces clearly. The master stood up and chanted loudly, as if trying to summon gods and Buddhas for help. A few more minutes passed, and he suddenly collapsed, screaming, "It hurts! It hurts!" When people rushed to help him, he shouted, "The cloth! Look at the cloth!" Everyone then noticed that the cloth was covered with dense footprints, some large, some small, as if many people had trampled on it. But from the beginning of the ritual until then, no one had even approached it. Everyone was so scared that their limbs turned to jelly. The master by now had calmed down. He gritted his teeth and said, "Quickly, get fire to me, we must burn that cloth." So everyone followed suit. They poured kerosene from an oil lamp on the altar and lit it. Things got even stranger when the flame shot up high. But the cloth remained completely unharmed. The master's face now showed clear panic. He sat cross-legged, raised both hands, and performed a madra. He chanted, "I summon the Supreme Venerable Lord and all heavenly soldiers and generals to help me as commanded by the law." As soon as he finished his incantation, thunder and lightning erupted in the sky. A lightning bolt struck directly down onto the altar, splitting it in two. All the items displayed on it were utterly destroyed. At this sight, everyone turned pale with fear. No one was calm enough to stay. They scattered and ran in all directions. As for the master, he seemed to know he couldn't do anything. He stood up, gathered a few of his spiritual tools, and left. In the nights that followed, there were several motorcycle and car accidents on that very stretch of road. The result was that one person had almost all his limbs broken down to his feet. On the way to the emergency room, this man kept saying that two shadowy figures, a man and a woman, blocked his way and pushed him. At this point, no one trusted anyone. For almost a month afterward, every half-month or so, there would be another accident. It got to the point where people had to avoid that section of the road and dared not pass through it. The houses around closed their doors, and talismans were pasted everywhere. One afternoon, as a light rain fell, people saw a familiar figure walking along the narrow path. This person was none other than the same sorcerer who had failed in the previous ritual. He announced that this time he had prepared more carefully to perform a very powerful ritual, and he also had the help of several fellow practitioners. Hearing this, although people were still wary from the last time, their curiosity drew quite a few to come and watch. The altar built for the ritual was very large. The master took a small wooden box from the bag he was carrying. Inside were two crimson talismans. He arranged two paper figures, a man and a woman, and pasted the talismans on their backs. Without asking, everyone could guess that these two figures represented the ill-fated couple. Once again, the memory of the failed ritual appeared as dark clouds gathered in the sky. The master looked at his understanding fellow practitioners, asking them to help. The murmured chants echoed, accompanied by the intense concentration on the faces of the surrounding crowd. But this time, the situation seemed more promising, as the dark clouds dissipated after the incantation was finished. The sky became sunny again. "Amazing, master! Amazing!" Everyone clapped and cheered at the effectiveness of the spell. Yet in a flash, the master's fellow practitioner vomited a mouthful of fresh blood, and his entire body convulsed. "Oh my God, what's happening?" The crowd began to clamor. The master was also terrified. He quickly rushed over, performed a madra, and pressed several pressure points on his colleague's body. But it seemed he was too late, and in a blink of an eye, the other sorcerer stopped breathing. Needless to say, the crowd scattered like a hive of bees, fleeing in all directions. When the incident of a spiritual practitioner dying during a ritual occurred, the authorities strictly prohibited any similar activities. As for the sorcerer himself, his resentment seemed to have reached its peak. So that night, he disregarded the government's ban and went alone to perform the ritual. The result was no different. The next morning, some people passing by discovered his stiff body by the roadside. But along with it, in his hand, he clutched a piece of paper. It should be called a suicide note. In the letter, the master wrote that the source of this bizarre phenomenon was not simply a traffic accident, but also because the couple died at an inauspicious hour, near an area of fierce warfare in the past. So the negative energy was very strong, leading to deep resentment and turning them into vengeful spirits. Now, only the sacrifice of his own life could dispel the demonic energy of the two. In the letter, the master also added that after his death, they should set up a small shrine for him. Not too much incense was needed, just enough to maintain it on the full moon and mid-month days. As for the family of the couple, they should invite another master to perform additional soul-calling rituals. When the ghostly energy subsided, they would no longer harbor so much hatred. After the letter was publicized, people actively followed the instructions. Even the couple's family invited another master. It's unknown if they succeeded in laying the vengeful spirits to rest, but from then on, the spirits no longer appeared and pushed people off the road. About 2 years passed. Just when everyone thought everything was peaceful, on a full moon day, when some people brought incense to the small shrine by the roadside, a young man suddenly collapsed, his head lolling to one side, muttering a string of strange, unfamiliar words. After a while, the young man introduced himself as the spirit of the old sorcerer who had died years ago for the sake of spiritual appeasement. He said that, in reality, the souls of those two people had not yet returned home but were wandering everywhere. Now they no longer harmed innocent people, but only wanted revenge on the person who caused their demise. Mrs. Nam stopped her story here and sighed. When the rumors spread, I told your mother to go to the pagoda to offer prayers and ask to lessen your bad luck. Since then, nothing strange has happened. But now that you're back, you should still be a little careful. You never know. Mrs. Nam's hesitation made Quoc understand the hidden meaning, but he quickly forced a smile and waved his hand. Mrs. Nam, it's nothing. Thank you for telling me. As for me, I've been burdened by my crime all this time. Even in the early days in prison and after court, I heard cries and dreamt of the accident replaying every night. But then it passed, and I no longer had those nightmares. I guess they've found peace now. If that's the case, then it's good, but you still need to be careful, walk carefully, avoid what you can. And sometimes, go to the pagoda to pray for good fortune or repent. Yes, I know, it's getting late. I'll go light some incense for them now. How much do I owe you, Auntie? After paying, Quoc headed straight for the cemetery. The graves of the two victims were in a corner, quite well maintained. Their family must visit them often. Quoc placed the items he had bought on the ground and began to light the incense. Before he could kneel down and bow, a voice called from behind, "Hey, you!" Quoc startled and looked towards the source of the voice. The person was a man, about 30, roughly Quoc's age, but looking much more weathered. The man approached him, then asked, "What are you?" But before he could finish, his eyes widened and his face turned grim. "What are you doing here? You've come to pay your respects, haven't you?" Quoc, of course, didn't understand what was happening. He stammered, "Hello, sir. Are you—" A swift, powerful punch struck Quoc's face. Caught off guard, he stumbled backward, his eyes still bewildered. "Are you hitting me? What's wrong with you?" "What's wrong? Don't you know how long I've waited for this day? For over a decade, you hid behind prison walls. Did you think you'd be safe forever? No way. No one can protect you now. You have to pay for your crime. You must atone for what you did to my brother and sister-in-law." The man's words made Quoc realize. This person standing before him was the younger brother of the unfortunate couple. A wave of guilt once again flooded Quoc's mind. He closed his eyes, showing no reaction, as if willing to accept any beating or torture, as long as the other person felt some solace. Quoc endured 3 or 4 more punches before some people visiting nearby graves ran over to intervene. When the crowd arrived, the man let go of Quoc and turned, walking away. Quoc, still on the ground, gritted his teeth, enduring the pain. After lighting incense at the 2 graves before him, Quoc straightened his clothes, brushed off the dirt from his pants from when he fell, and then left the cemetery. He headed straight for the lumber mill. Arriving there, he dismounted and looked inside. The mill was huge, easily 400–500 square meters, consisting of 2 parts for the workers and a 3-story house, presumably for the owner. He slowly walked inside. On the ground floor of the 3-story house, a middle-aged man was sitting, drinking tea. From his demeanor and appearance, he seemed to be the owner of the mill. He saw Quoc and called out, "Young man, what brings you here?" Quoc stopped, clasped his hands in front of his stomach, and stammered, "Sir, I saw a workers' wanted notice outside. I'd like to apply for a job." "Oh, come in and let's talk." "Yes, sir." "My name is Quang, I'm the owner of this mill. What's your name and where are you from?" "My name is Quoc, from Fulay, about an hour's drive from here." "Oh, not too far. What did you do before this? Where did you work?" Mr. Quang's question made Quoc hesitate. He raised a hand to scratch his head. "To be honest, sir, I've just been released from prison." Mr. Quang startled, staring intently at Quoc. At this moment, Quoc was already imagining receiving a rejection. But before Mr. Quang could say anything, a familiar voice echoed from the mill. "You dog, what are you doing here? Have you come here to die?" Quoc was stunned. He couldn't have imagined such a narrow escape even in his dreams. The person who had just spoken was the same man who had assaulted him at the cemetery earlier. Before Quoc could react, the man had already raised his fist, intending to act violently again. Seeing this, Mr. Quang immediately shouted, "Fuck, what do you think you're doing? Do you not respect me? Go back to work. There's no place for you here." Mr. Quang's words seemed to have an effect. Fuck dropped his fist, turned, and went back into the mill. Waiting until Fuck was out of sight, Mr. Quang asked, "Do you know him?" Quoc sighed, nodded, and told him his entire story. After listening, Mr. Quang's eyes softened, showing some sympathy, and then from misfortune came a stroke of luck for Quoc because of his story. Mr. Quang no longer scrutinized him as much as before. He calmly asked, "All right, the past is the past, don't worry. I don't pay attention to those things. What I care about is your skill. Go into the mill and do some work for me. Show me what you've got. If you meet my requirements, I'll hire you." "Yes, sir." Quoc was overjoyed and followed Mr. Quang towards the mill. Of course, he also noticed Fuck's hateful gaze from inside. Indeed, this was the only opportunity he could find to hope to rebuild his life. So he sat down, took a block of wood, and began to carve and shape it. In just 15 minutes, Quoc completed a window detail. Mr. Quang nodded, showing satisfaction. "Good craftsmanship. Fast yet very meticulous and careful. Can you give me your phone number?" Sir, I don't have one right now," Quoc stammered, for he didn't own a phone. But Mr. Quang seemed to understand. "It's all right. Go home now and come back at 7 a.m. tomorrow to start work, okay?" Mr. Quang's words made Quoc feel as if he had been brought back from the dead. He knelt down, expressing his gratitude. Returning from the lumber mill, Quoc shared the good news with his parents. Mrs. Lai, with tears in her eyes, clasped her hands and bowed before the ancestral altar, as if thanking the heavens for guiding and supporting her son. Mr. Tu controlled his emotions better, but just by looking into his eyes, one could tell how happy he was. However, Quoc did not tell them about Fuck. He knew they would worry. After all, he would soon have to face Fuck's hatred alone. Returning in the afternoon, Quoc took advantage of his remaining free time to visit his ex-wife's house. On the way, he carefully prepared his greetings and sincere apologies. However, everything he prepared quickly went to waste due to disappointment. Since Linh left to marry someone else, her parents had also sold their house and moved to the market town. What's more, according to the neighbors, Linh had no contact with her own family, probably because she was afraid of gossip. Returning home without being able to say a word to his ex-wife, Quoc looked sad. Noticing this, Mrs. Lai asked her son, "What's wrong, son?" "Oh, nothing, Mom." Don't deny it with a face like a steamed bun and say it's nothing. Is something wrong at the lumber mill? "No, Mom." Quoc hesitated for a moment longer before recounting the story to Mrs. Lai. After listening, she pondered, "You loved her very much, didn't you?" Without waiting for her son to confirm, she continued, "Well, that's all in the past. She hasn't appeared since then. She hasn't even visited Engia once. It's truly cruel. The boy keeps saying he sees his mother come to play, but there's nothing. She's really heartless. I told her clearly if she wanted to leave, she should just leave. But she just left without a word of farewell. Even her clothes and belongings are still in the house. She didn't even bother to come back for them." "What did you say?" "She. I knew when you were in prison, but I didn't tell you because I was afraid you'd be sad. I even tried to find her to talk things over, but I couldn't find her anywhere. Your in-laws have also moved elsewhere, so everything is settled. I don't want you to be sad over her anymore, son." Hearing Mrs. Lai's words, Quoc grew even sadder. He sat there in a daze, contemplating the jumble of thoughts in his mind. Another day passed. This morning was Quoc's first day of work at the lumber mill. He arrived 15 minutes earlier than scheduled. Mr. Quang introduced the workers and the scope of work. Quoc tried to look for Fuck but didn't see him anywhere. The truth was, this morning, besides his work at the mill, he also wanted to speak properly and apologize to Fuck, like two men. And if Fuck wanted any compensation, he would try to agree. Just as he thought of him, Fuck appeared. Quoc stepped aside, expecting at least one punch from him. However, things took an unexpected turn. Fuck walked into the mill, looked at Quoc, and then went straight to his workspace. Throughout the work, Quoc noticed Fuck didn't even glance at him. It was as if they were existing in two parallel worlds. But Quoc told himself this isn't good. At least he could work peacefully, earn money, and take care of his son. That was his wish, but whether Quoc's upcoming life would be peaceful or not remained to be seen. A week passed. Quoc's work at the mill had stabilized somewhat. With his solid skills, he gradually gained Mr. Kwong's trust and even that of the other workers. Of course, except for Fuck, he still quietly completed his work and then immediately left. This afternoon was no different. Since it was the beginning of the week, everyone invited Quoc out for drinks, but when they asked Fuck, he shook his head and left. The group sighed and didn't get home until after 9 p.m. Quoc, feeling a bit tipsy, got on his motorcycle and headed home. He began to recall things from the past, and of course, he missed Linh, his ex-wife. Lost in his thoughts, Quoc suddenly startled when he caught a glimpse of a car's headlights. A dark shadow just darted in front of him. With what little presence of mind he had left, he slammed on the brakes. Due to the sudden braking and the old bicycle's brake system, a loud snap sounded, indicating his brakes had broken. But it seemed too late. Both he and the bike stumbled and fell onto the road. Quoc grimaced, trying to suppress the pain, but what he feared most was if the shadowy figure he saw earlier was hurt. Immediately, Quoc propped himself up to look around. There was no one nearby. The streetlights, though not too bright, were enough for Quoc to be certain. To be more at ease, he stood up and called out, "Is anyone here?" After nearly 10 minutes, Quoc was sure there was no one near, so he stopped his bike. The brakes were broken, so he had no choice but to walk it. After a few steps, he stopped again because the bike felt unusually heavy. He even had to strain his arm to push it. It felt as if it was caught on something. He stopped the bike and bent down to check, but everything was perfectly normal. The only problem with the bike was that its brakes were broken. Realizing it was getting late, Quoc tried his best to push the bike. Finally, after more than half an hour of struggling, he arrived home. Not wanting his parents to worry, Quoc did everything very quietly. He parked the bike in a corner of the house, then tiptoed, opened the door, and went to his room. He planned to take it for repair tomorrow morning. Assuming the streak of bad luck was over, Quoc found a bit of peace. As Quoc stepped into the bathroom to take off his clothes and wash, he noticed a rather long scratch on his right arm. Quoc winced and muttered, "Must have been from the fall earlier. Luckily, it's not too deep." After cleaning it thoroughly, he took some medical alcohol and bandages to dress the wound. By the time he climbed into bed, the clock showed past midnight. Looking at Engia sleeping soundly beside him, Quoc smiled faintly, then tried to get some sleep before work the next morning. Then, in his deep sleep, for some reason, he began to dream of the accident from years ago. Not only that, but the images were extremely vivid, especially the two distorted bodies lying in the road, seemingly those of the unfortunate couple. Quoc was so scared that he covered his ears, bent his head down, and screamed. The scream woke him from the nightmare and, of course, startled everyone else in the house. Engia looked at his father with bewildered eyes and asked, "Dad, what's wrong?" In the next room, Mrs. Lai also rushed over, knocking frantically on Quoc's door. "Quoc, what's wrong, son?" After a moment, Quoc swallowed the lump of sadness in his throat and replied softly, "It's nothing, Mom, nothing." "Did you have a bad dream, son? Are you sure you're okay?" "Yes, I'm sure." Quoc looked up at the wall clock. "It's still early, just past 4. Go back to sleep, Mom." Hearing her son say that, Mrs. Lai sighed in relief and slowly walked back to her room. After his mother left, Quoc sat there, comforting his son to sleep while trying to sort through his own thoughts. In truth, he had experienced such dreams in the early days of his imprisonment, overwhelmed by his guilt. But then everything returned to normal. Now, Quoc tried to reassure himself by thinking that perhaps his fall on the way home from drinking had inadvertently reminded him of the old accident, and that's why he was temporarily haunted. With that thought, Quoc's spirits quickly lifted. He lay back down on the bed, trying to catch a little more sleep before going to work. However, this time his sleep lasted much longer than Quoc expected. He didn't wake up until past 10 a.m., a bit startled to realize he had overslept by an hour. He quickly tried to get out of bed, but immediately felt a sharp, bone-deep pain in his arm. This pain came from the injury he had sustained last night in the accident, but if he remembered correctly, it wasn't deep and had been thoroughly cleaned. Curious, Quoc removed the bandage from his arm. His eyes widened as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing, because the wound was now swollen and had turned a dark reddish purple. "What is this?" he gasped. The throbbing pain was so intense that he had to grit his teeth to pull the bandage away from the fluid in the wound. Thinking he was infected, he quickly stood up, put on his jacket to cover the wound, and walked to the clinic to get it bandaged. But then, in the yard, Quoc remembered his father's motorcycle had no brakes. He had no choice but to grit his teeth, suppress the pain, and walk towards the clinic. Upon seeing Quoc's arm, the nurse even grimaced. "Oh my goodness, when did you get this injury? Why are you only coming now?" "I just got it last night." "Really? How could it get so bad in such a short time? You have to tell me the truth. How can I help you if you say that?" "I'm telling the truth. I just got it last night. Why would I lie to you about this?" "All right then, sit still and I'll clean the wound and bandage it for you." After nearly half an hour of fussing, Quoc's wound was treated. With the situation under control, he no longer felt the intense pain he had in the morning. Paying for the medicine, Quoc didn't forget to thank the nurse before leaving. The next issue he had to face was repairing his motorcycle, and more importantly, going to the mill to apologize to Mr. Quang. Now he realized how inconvenient it was not to have a phone. So Quoc spent the remaining hour of the morning repairing his bike and buying himself a basic phone. In the early afternoon, he rode his bike to the mill. Initially, Mr. Quang seemed annoyed, but when he saw Quoc's bandaged arm, he asked, "What happened to you? I tried to contact you but couldn't reach you." "Last night, I got a bit drunk on the way home and fell, sir." "Oh, really? Those guys, always getting drunk. You should cut down on drinking and working so hard. What good does it do to get yourself into these things?" "Yes, sir, I know. I'm very sorry about this morning. I just bought a phone, so next time something happens, I'll call to inform you." "Oh, it's good that you're okay. Can you work now? If not, I'll let you off today and you can come back tomorrow." "No, it's fine. The wound is bandaged tightly, I can work." "All right, then go on in." Quoc nodded and walked inside. When he reached his spot, he sat down at the table to carve as usual, and of course, he glanced towards Fuck's area. However, today he didn't see Fuck in the mill. Returning to his work, Quoc took a few pieces of wood and began to carve and trim. However, as he worked, Quoc noticed the other workers looking at him with rather puzzled expressions. When he looked at them, they all quickly turned away. After a while, someone walked over and patted Quoc on the shoulder. Quoc stopped, asking, "Hey, why aren't you working?" "What are you talking about? I've been working this whole time." "Are you all right? I haven't seen you do anything all morning. You just pick up a piece of wood and then put it down." "Oh, are you trying to trick me? I've made quite a few pieces here." He gestured towards his finished products as he spoke, but to his surprise, there were no finished products at all. Around Quoc were only piles of scattered wood. He was stunned and stammered, "What's going on? Is anyone playing a prank?" "No prank. If you're not feeling well, just go home, don't force yourself. And don't go near that cutting machine, or you might lose a hand." Hearing this, Quoc felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He had clearly been working all this time, so how could everything be like this now? His colleagues advised him for a bit longer, then Quoc asked for permission to leave early. On the way home, no matter how hard he thought, he couldn't find an explanation for what had just happened. When he got home, still feeling exhausted, Quoc lay down on the bed to rest for a while. Seeing his son come home early, Mrs. Lai was about to ask, but before she could, his room door slammed shut. Quoc lay on the bed, his mind light as if floating somewhere. After about half an hour in that state, he drifted off to sleep. He thought this would be a moment of peaceful rest to regain his strength. But no, it was not as calm as Quoc imagined, for the terrifying nightmare from last night began to return. This time, he saw himself standing at the scene of the accident from years ago. More frightening still, the two bodies of the unfortunate couple stood up, dragging their mangled bodies towards him. Terrified, Quoc tried to back away, trying to run, and of course, the two bodies couldn't catch up. But this didn't mean Quoc had escaped, because they suddenly changed direction and turned back. Quoc was very confused, but then he realized what the two people were aiming for. It was Mrs. Lai, Mr. Tu, and Engia. Another strange thing was that all three looked completely normal. They should have been terrified seeing the horrific scene before them. The couple's figures moved closer and closer. Quoc felt something was wrong and shouted, "Stop, stop!" But it seemed his shouts were too late, and the two figures rushed forward, grabbing his parents and dragging them away. Engia stood alone, his eyes turning black, blood pouring from his nose, mouth, and both ears. The fear in Quoc reached its peak. He woke up with a blood-curdling scream from his nightmare. "What's wrong with me?" It took another moment for Quoc to realize he was still lying in his familiar bed. From outside, he heard a knocking at the door. "Quoc, Quoc, what's wrong, son?" Quoc recognized Mr. Two's voice, but just as he was about to sit up to open the door for his father, Quoc's eyes widened in shock once again. Because his entire right arm was bleeding so profusely that it had soaked through the bandage and was dripping onto the bed. Needless to say, Quoc was terrified beyond belief. He shrieked and fell back onto the bed. Before he passed out, he only managed to see the door of his room burst open. Mr. Two rushed in with a worried look. This was the third time Quoc found himself in the clinic. Beside his bed, Mrs. Lai was huddled in a chair. He was about to speak, but realized his throat was so sore and painful that just trying to open it felt like someone was cutting his neck. Then came a thud from the bed, and Mrs. Lai startled awake. "Quoc, Quoc, are you okay? Does it hurt anywhere, Quoc?" He gestured, indicating his sore throat, unable to speak. It took a long time before he could stammer out a few words. "Mom, why am I here? What happened?" Mrs. Lai sighed. "I don't know either. Yesterday, we were all preparing dinner when we heard your scream. Everyone was so worried. We broke down the door and found you unconscious on the bed, eyes wide open. So we had to call an ambulance to take you to the emergency room. But when we got here, after an examination, the doctor only found that you had a wound on your arm. Other than that, they couldn't find any other illness. He gave you a sedative and said he would come when you woke up." "How long have I been here?" "Almost a day, I guess. It's 4 p.m. now." "Oh, where's Dad, Mom?" "He's at home, cooking for Engia and taking him to school. Only I've been here looking after you all day. Let me call the doctor, okay?" Mrs. Lai left the room. A moment later, she returned with an older doctor in a white coat. He adjusted his glasses and sat down, looking at Quoc. "How do you feel? Does it hurt anywhere?" "To be honest, doctor, I don't feel any pain, just tired." As the doctor spoke, he pointed to the bandage on Quoc's arm. "How long have you had this? Why did you let it get so severely infected?" "What, infected?" "Yes, it's infected, and it's almost reached the bone. Luckily, you were brought in early." "No, that can't be." Quoc shook his head vigorously. He recounted how he had gone to the nurse yesterday, had the wound cleaned and bandaged. Furthermore, it had only been 2 days. How could the wound have become so severe? Hearing Quoc's story, the doctor was equally curious, but he could only explain it according to his medical knowledge. He advised that the wound had been treated, but Quoc should temporarily avoid strenuous movement. This meant he wouldn't be able to continue working at the mill. After the doctor left, Quoc sat on the bed, crestfallen. He was extremely disappointed in himself. If only he had refused to drink that night, nothing would have happened. The more he thought about it, the more he despised himself, and he had no other choice but to call Mr. Quang to inform him he would be taking leave. Without even meeting in person, just hearing his voice, Quoc understood how angry Mr. Quang felt. "What kind of work are you doing, always taking leave?" "If you don't want to work, just say so. No need for excuses." "No, sir, you've misunderstood. I'm really in pain. Please understand, sir. This will be my last time. I won't ask for any salary, don't worry." At this point, Mr. Quang didn't reply further but hung up. Quoc put the phone down on the bed, sighing tiredly. He planned to ask for discharge procedures tonight, but Mrs. Lai adamantly refused, saying they should wait until tomorrow morning for the nurse to change the bandage and check the wound again before he could go home. Although he didn't want to, he had to accept it. Returning in the evening, seeing her son was doing better, Mrs. Lai went home. Before leaving, she also instructed her son to stay until tomorrow morning after the checkup before he could go home. After his mother left, Quoc felt the atmosphere inside the hospital room was stuffy. Coupled with lying in bed all day, he decided to go outside for a walk to clear his head. This was just a small clinic, so its park area was quite small, consisting only of an examination room, a dispensary, 2 or 3 patient rooms, and a morgue. Quoc went out and sat down on a bench, then lit a cigarette. It had been quite a while since he touched one, but for some reason, tonight he felt he needed it. Taking a few more drags, he felt his mind clear, less heavy than before. Next, he looked down at his hand. The wound no longer hurt. Quoc sighed, pursed his lips, and stared blankly into the space in front of him. And just then, he saw a white shadow flit by. Its speed was so fast that Quoc could only tell it was a human figure. He assumed it was a nurse running somewhere, so he didn't pay attention. But now, that shadow glided back and forth again. This time, its speed was slower, and Quoc could clearly see that it wasn't a nurse at all, but a woman in white clothes. Her hair was long, covering her entire face. He couldn't see her face. The figure slowly advanced towards him. But then, in that moment, Quoc noticed something terrifying. This person wasn't walking. She was floating, as if flying towards him. In Quoc's mind, there was only one thought: he was seeing a ghost. Fear surged through him. He stood up from the bench and ran like mad back to his hospital room. Once inside, he scrambled onto the bed, curling up, trembling as he stared at the door. Luckily, there were 2 or 3 other patients in the room at the moment, so his fear began to subside a bit. Until now, Quoc had heard quite a few spiritual stories in hospitals. But this was the first time he had witnessed one with his own eyes, and of course, he knew he couldn't be mistaken because his mind was completely clear, not dreamy or hazy at all. Reluctantly, even though he didn't want to, due to the effect of the painkiller he had just taken, sleep came to Quoc as a matter of course. He lay on the bed, soft snores echoing regularly. Would this be a peaceful sleep? Not quite. Because in his dizzy state, Quoc saw extremely jumbled images. About the past, then the image of his ex-wife, Linh. She stood opposite him, her eyes swollen and red, as if wanting to say something, then everything disappeared into a gloomy darkness. The next morning, Quoc woke up, and the nurse cleaned his wound. The situation seemed to be progressing quite well, as the pain had decreased by about a third. Quoc no longer frowned or winced. With this condition, he would probably be able to return to work in just 2 or 3 more days. Quoc was a little joyful. He thanked the nurse and doctor, then stood up to complete the discharge procedures. Arriving at his house gate, Quoc looked inside and opened the gate. But before he could take a step inside, he saw his parents running out in a panic. Mr. Tu carried Engia in his arms and said, "Quickly, carry him to the hospital." Of course, Quoc didn't understand what was happening, but he instinctively followed his father's words. On the way, Mrs. Lai explained to Quoc that while they were sitting at home, Engia suddenly fell backward. His body convulsed, his mouth muttered something, and then he fainted. Both of them were terrified and rushed to carry him to the clinic with Quoc. Hearing this, Quoc was utterly worried. In just a few short minutes, he had to return to this clinic again. After more than an hour, the emergency room door opened. Finally, his parents got up from their seats and rushed over, their faces filled with worry. "Doctor, what's wrong with our son?" "Please calm down, he has symptoms of epilepsy. But luckily, he was brought here in time." "Oh my God, why is this happening to my son?" "Please calm down, ma'am. If this is detected early and treated actively, it's not life-threatening. For now, just let him stay here. When he's stable, he can go home to recuperate." By evening, Quoc sat in the hospital room next to Engia, who was sound asleep in bed. Mr. Tu had returned home to take care of the cooking and farm work. Seeing Engia's face looking somewhat rosy again, Quoc felt a little relieved. If nothing else, he and his son could be discharged later and go home. While Quoc was lost in thought, he heard a voice beside him ask, "Dad?" He looked down and realized Engia had woken up. His eyes were still dazed. Quoc raised his hand to his forehead to check. "How do you feel, son? Does it hurt anywhere?" "No, but Dad, what's wrong with me? I saw Mom." His son's words startled Quoc. He asked again, "You saw Mom, where?" "I don't know, it felt like I was dreaming of Mom, but it felt so real. Mom sat smiling at me, stroking my hair and tickling me." Quoc sighed. That was just his son's dream. The two talked for a while longer, then a nurse came in from outside to announce that Engia could go home. Upon arriving home, while Engia was excitedly chattering about school, Quoc hadn't even opened the gate when he was startled. He saw 4 or 5 black crows perched on the roof. They looked at him and suddenly cawed loudly. Quoc muttered, "What is this?" Inside the house, Mrs. Lai heard the birds' cries and quickly rushed out. In the countryside, people believed that black crows coming to the house were a bad omen, and they were cawing again. Mrs. Lai's hands trembled as she gasped, "Oh my God, why is this happening?" Mr. Tu walked over to his wife. Witnessing the crows, he seemed calmer. He grabbed a stick and waved it to shoo the birds away. One would think they would leave with his threat, but no, they cawed even louder. From somewhere, another dozen or so crows flew in and perched on the roof. Mrs. Lai was so scared she fainted. The events unfolded so quickly that no one in the house had time to react. Quoc quickly rushed to support his mother and carried her inside. Mr. Tu was still trying to chase the crows away. Luckily, some neighbors, hearing the commotion, ran over to help. With more people, the crows cawed a few more times, then flapped their wings and flew away. Engia ate his dinner early tonight to take his medicine and then went to his room to rest. At that moment, in the living room, though Quoc and Mr. and Mrs. Tu were all there, no one spoke a word to each other. Mrs. Lai had just regained consciousness after fainting. Her face was visibly pale and weak. Mr. Tu stared blankly into the distance, looking very pensive. Quoc was equally worried, but if things continued like this, it wouldn't be good. So he broke the silence. "Mom, Dad, please eat. Why are you both sitting there so still?" "How do you feel? Are you tired, son?" Mrs. Lai shook her head. "I'm not hungry, you go ahead and eat." As she spoke, she looked up at the ancestral altar in the house and clasped her hands, bowing. None of them said anything more, but Quoc understood that everyone harbored a premonition of ill omen. At 11 p.m., it started to rain. The rain wasn't heavy, but the amount of water it brought helped cool down the air considerably. Quoc sat on the bed, looking at the window. Engia was still sleeping soundly, unaware of anything. He took a deep breath and began to think about all the troubles he had experienced. Indeed, since his bike accident, there hadn't been a moment of peace in the house. And the two disturbing nightmares where he saw the ill-fated couple, could it be more than just a coincidence? Were they seeking revenge on him? Quoc sighed, for he realized that his time in prison could only be called paying his debt to the law, but how could he repay a debt of life, a debt of blood? Lost in thought, he peeked, intending to go out for a walk to calm himself. But as he left his room, Quoc was startled to see Mrs. Lai kneeling before the ancestral altar. Her eyes were swollen and red. There was no need to guess how much she had cried. Seeing this, Quoc softly called out, "Mom!" Hearing Quoc's voice, Mrs. Lai flinched a little, but when she recognized her son, she nodded and motioned for him to come closer. Quoc approached. Mrs. Lai then gently put a lit incense stick into her son's hand. "Quickly, go bow to our ancestors, Quoc." Although Quoc didn't understand what was happening, he quickly followed his mother's words. After lighting the incense, he sat down next to Mrs. Lai. "Mom, why aren't you asleep? It's very late." "How could I sleep? Aren't you worried about your son?" "Mom, don't worry. The doctor said he's fine." "No, I'm not worried about that. What are you worried about then?" "Do you remember the crows this afternoon? What people say isn't wrong. Crows coming to the house is a bad omen. It means someone in the house is about to pass away. I've been thinking about it, and now I'm begging our ancestors. If someone has to go, let it be me, not my grandson. He's still young, he doesn't know anything." "Oh my goodness, Mom, why are you saying such things?" "It's nothing. I've lived this long, there's nothing left to regret." As Mrs. Lai said this, Quoc's mood sank. He remembered what Engia said earlier and secretly thought that the person who would die was probably him, not his mother. He was the one who was about to pay the price. "What did you say? What's going on? Has something happened?" "Nothing, I'm just rambling. Don't try to hide it from your mother. You clearly have something bothering you today. Now that you're here, tell me. Are you still trying to hide it from your mother?" "No, I'm not," Quoc stammered. He realized he couldn't hide it from Mrs. Lai. He recounted all the things he had experienced recently. Hearing this, Mrs. Lai's mouth dropped open in shock. "Why didn't you tell me, son? If not for tonight, when were you planning to hide it?" "I'm sorry, but I thought I could bear this alone. I didn't want my family to worry." Mrs. Lai's eyes widened, and she almost yelled, "Do you think they will leave us alone? You didn't intentionally cause the accident, yet they haven't found peace and hold deep resentment. Sometimes I think that what happened to you is because of them." "What did you say? Is that true?" "I don't know, but let's wait until tomorrow. I'll ask the village master next door. He's very skilled. I'll ask him to perform a ritual to pray for their souls to find peace. Would that be okay, Mom? If we do that, will their souls forgive me?" Mrs. Lai remained silent. In the room, only the sighs of mother and son remained. The next morning, as soon as the rooster crowed, Quoc rushed Mrs. Lai to the neighboring village to find the sorcerer. Upon arriving, since it was still early, his house was closed. Mrs. Lai got out of the car and called out, "Master Tu! Master, are you home, Master Tu?" After a moment, someone emerged from the house. However, before Mrs. Lai could speak, the man waved his hand and said, "Quickly, kneel down, both of you." His voice was not loud, but its solemnity made the hair on Quoc's body stand on end. He quickly knelt. The man walked closer, opened his hand, placed it on Quoc's forehead, and then whispered a chant. As he chanted, Quoc felt lighter, as if a 1,000-pound weight had been lifted from him. After more than half an hour of chanting, the master calmly said, "Your son has been cursed. I have only helped superficially. If you want a complete cure, come inside and I will perform the ritual more thoroughly." Both Mrs. Lai and Quoc were stunned by what they had just heard. Both quickly walked inside. In the middle of the house, Quoc was told by the master to sit opposite the Buddhist altar. He took out a bowl and a small knife. Next, he used the knife to prick Quoc's forehead and dripped blood into the bowl. Strangely, the drops of blood flowing from his forehead were dark black, not red like normal people's blood. That wasn't all. From the wound, the master took his finger and pulled out a strand of hair. Mrs. Lai, witnessing this scene, got goosebumps. The strand of hair grew longer and thicker, probably reaching a meter in length. As the master pulled it out, Quoc felt his body grow cold and his head throbbed as if pounded by a hammer. After a while, the strand of hair was finally removed. The master held it up, forming a ball the size of a fist, then threw it directly into the burning oil lamp. The flame in the lamp flared up, creating a dark green smoke. Amidst the smoke, faint images resembling human faces writhed. As the smoke dissipated, Quoc collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Seeing this, Mrs. Lai quickly rushed to her son, but the master said, "Let him lie there, he'll wake up after a while." "Master, what about the evil things? Are they gone?" "Don't worry, it has been resolved. The person who cast the spell, though powerful, did not have very high spiritual power, so I could dispel it quickly. Now that person is probably suffering from a backfire spell. However, to be safe, I will give you a few talismans later to keep in the house and for the others to wear. Do not remove the talismans for 3 days. After that period, the bad omen will turn into good fortune." Everyone joined hands and fanned Mrs. Lai, who couldn't contain her joy. She clasped her hands together, thanking the master profusely. Quoc lay unconscious for a while. He slowly began to perceive his surroundings as if they were spinning. He found himself in a dimension that was only white. There, he saw a figure in front of him. He narrowed his eyes, trying to see who it was, but everything was blurry and indistinct. When he tried to run towards it, he suddenly woke up. Seeing this, Mrs. Lai, sitting beside him, asked, "Are you all right? How do you feel?" "I'm fine." Quoc shook his head. Then he was astonished, as if his arm no longer hurt. He slowly uncovered it, even more surprised that the wound, which had been severely infected just yesterday, was now beginning to heal. Both mother and son thanked the master profusely. He smiled, about to say something, but then stopped and shook his head. "All right, both of you go home and remember to follow my instructions." However, due to the vague dream he had just had and the master's hesitant expression, Quoc felt a persistent uneasiness, as if something was still not right. So, after stepping outside, he pretended to have forgotten something and turned back inside. Upon entering, he saw the master sitting before the altar, and he slowly said, "Master." The master sighed and cut Quoc off. "Come in, I'll tell you. Some truths, no matter how much you try to avoid them, cannot be avoided." Quoc was a bit surprised, but he quickly walked over and sat down beside him. The master then recounted the story from the beginning. Nearly 10 years ago, after Quoc went to prison to serve his sentence, Linh outside tried desperately to clear her husband's name. She was willing to go to any length, no matter how far. Because of this, Linh was disowned by her own parents. They told her she was doing something foolish and useless, and they cut ties with her. Despite their strong opposition, Linh persisted in trying to clear her husband's name. As for Mrs. Lai, Linh dared not tell her, partly because she feared she would worry, partly because she thought Mrs. Lai would be like her own parents and not support her, so she carried out her plan in secret. That year, during a cold, biting winter, a heavy rain caused floods to rush down from the upstream like a broken dam. Linh heard news that her husband's case file might be reviewed, so she ignored the rain and the raging floodwaters and brought the documents to the market town to submit them in time. Somewhere in the middle of a bridge, the floodwaters arrived. Linh was swept into the raging water. She managed to hold on for about 10 minutes before being swept away. Her body was later buried under the river's silt and could not surface, which meant no one discovered Lin's accident. From then on, people spread false rumors, saying she had run off to marry another man. Speaking of Linh, she had died, but because of her obsession with clearing her husband's name, her soul could not find peace. Day after day, she stayed close to protect her in-law's family and wait for Quoc's return. It was Linh herself who used the power of her spirit to fight against the spells. Otherwise, that night, she would have died in the accident on her way home. However, her power was limited, so this time she couldn't do anything more, even almost being obliterated into nothingness, unable to ever be reborn. Just now, when Quoc came, the master found and protected a remnant of Lin's spiritual energy. Hearing this, Quoc covered his face and wept bitterly. Outside, Mrs. Lai was no different, for she had followed her son at some point. Mother and son embraced each other. Indeed, for many years, they had been wrong to blame Lin. Following the master's advice, they would perform a ritual to help her soul find peace. For the rest of the family, they were to make offerings regularly and frequently chant Buddhist prayers to accumulate merit. A week later, Quoc's life returned to normal. This morning, he went to work at the lumber mill. Seeing him, Mr. Quang was very happy. He pulled Quoc aside and said, "What happened to you these past few days? My mill is very short of workers now, so you have to take care of your work. No more getting sick or anything, understood?" "Yes, I know. But Mr. Quang, you're usually very particular about workers. Did someone else quit?" "No, that fuck fellow died." "What? How did he die?" "I don't know either. About a week ago, around 6-7 a.m., he had just arrived to work when he suddenly collapsed, foamed at the mouth, and vomited a lot of black blood. Terrified, I took him to the emergency room, but it was too late, and no one found the cause. Until now, the workers in the mill think there's something supernatural here, so they're not coming to work. What do you say, Quoc, aren't you scared?" "I'm not scared of this. I'll go inside and work. Thank you for your care, sir." Having finished, Quoc walked straight into the mill, leaving Mr. Quang behind with a rather stunned look. Amazing, this guy is so brave. Even after hearing all that, he's not scared.